Okay, it's time for French knots. So I am going to just bring my needle up through the fabric. Then I'm going to take my left hand. I'm right-handed, so I'm using my left for this part. If you are left-handed, you'd want to use your right. I'm going to take just my thumb and index finger and pull the fabric, not the fabric, pull the thread sort of tight, not super tight, but just so that it's straight. And then I'm going to take my needle, which is in the other hand, and I'm going to wrap the thread over the needle. On this knot, I'm going to do that one time. Then I am going to take the tip of, here we go. I'm gonna wrap it over the needle. I'm gonna take the tip of my needle, and I'm hoping this is gonna work. And I am going to insert it in the same, or as close as I can get, into the same hole that I stuck it through to begin with. Then I always use this point to check. If I feel like I haven't done it quite right, I can just pull my needle out and start over. So I'm going again, hopefully you're not just so sick of me by this point. I'm gonna pull the thread with my left hand. I'm gonna wrap the thread over and under, just basically one time around the needle. And then I'm going to take the tip of my needle and stick it in the same spot that I pulled it out of, okay? Or as close as I can get to that. It does not have to be perfect at all. Again, no rules here. I usually put the needle through about 1/4 inch, and then I make sure that I've pulled tightly. And what you want to pull is the thread that's left, so that you've got a tight knot where you're pulling your needle back through. So then I've got the thread pulled tight, and I just pull my needle back through the fabric, and there's my French knot. We're gonna do some more. I want to show you that if you want chunkier French knots, you guys know I love my chunky thread. So this time I pull the thread up through the fabric. I'm going to wind my yarn or my thread around twice this time, okay? And I find it easiest, I suppose it's about 2.5 times that I've wound it, but I consider that twice. So I'm gonna pull it tight, put the end of my needle back through the same hole, and then let go and check. I'm good with the knot, and then pull it back through the fabric. So as you can see, that's quite a bit bigger than when I just wrapped the thread one time. Now we'll get really crazy, if you can get crazy at all while you embroider. Wild and crazy. So we're gonna pull the thread through. I'm gonna wrap this one 3 times. Okay, so I've got, you can see it's fairly long on my needle. It's about a little over 1/8 of an inch wide. So then I'm gonna take the needle, put it back through the same hole. Again, I'm gonna let go and check it. I don't let go and check every time, but when you're learning, it's a good idea to do that, especially if you're a perfectionist. And then I'm just gonna pull the thread back through. So you can see these 2 French knots had the thread wrapped 1 time, this had it twice, and this has it 3 times. you can get quite a bit thicker. And I never wrap it 4 times, but 3, 4, we can see. Oops, I don't know if that's gonna work. Maybe. You just do the same thing. And really, I wrapped that one tighter. That's a little better. So that's the French knot. Now I'm gonna, because I love to just, you know, not stop and start my thread. So I'm gonna drag my thread up here, and I am going to do what's called the ermine stitch. It is a good filling stitch. And I didn't use the ermine stitch on the sampler, but I like it, so I wanted to show you. It's just 3 straight stitches. And anytime you're wanting to kind of fill some space, it's a good stitch to do. It's just a fun way to kind of fill your fabric. So I'm just going to make 3 straight stitches, and I will be done. Then I'm gonna run out of thread. So I will just make 1 of these, but it's just basic. And a lot of the time I will actually do another stitch across and just sort of make an asterisk almost. So that's just a fun way to fill in spots on your fabric. And those are our stitches for tonight. So tonight we went over the French knot and the ermine stitch. And I realized that I hadn't really used those on my sample. And I don't know, I would use French knots. Actually, I did, I lied. I used some right in here. So where there were small circles, I'll use them. But I didn't necessarily use the ermine stitch. And I think that's okay. I think it's a great stitch to know, but you don't have to have it on your sampler. Or if you are unsure and want to just try it, just go to an area that you're not going to stitch necessarily and have in your hoop, and try experimenting with your stitches over there. That's a good way to kind of get a feel for it. I would definitely recommend that with the French knots especially. It's not such a big deal with the ermine stitch since it's just straight stitches, but I would find some out of the way place and I would practice your French knots over there, or with a different piece of fabric. You know, it could even just be, I don't know, it could be an old t-shirt. I guess it would not be ideal if the fabric had a bunch of stretch. So I would practice it somewhere before I actually started doing it on your stitching. Now, you guys know, and I've told you, I rip out all kinds of things. So I have made every mistake in the book, and I'm trying to see if I ripped stuff out here. You can't see it anymore. It looks like right in here I did. Usually you can tell because you can see little tiny holes. Since this is the backing fabric, I hadn't, if you rip something out and you have like a bigger hole, okay? So say you can kind of see that. If you just gently rub a fingernail over it in each direction, then you can definitely make it appear for the most part that you didn't rip anything out. So I wanted to take a little bit of time. We just launched our first slow stitching kit, and I wanted to take a little bit of time and explain to you what you get in the kit and how I did that. I have been trying to think through how to make patterns for slow stitching for quite a while. I will tell you that I find slow stitching to be normally faster than embroidery. And when I say that, here's what I mean. If you look at this piece right here, it's got very dense stitching, and my piece is heavy. There's weight to it. It's got some oomph, I guess, for lack of a better term. The stitches are really close together because I just followed the design on the fabric. But if you look at this slow stitching piece, and I will say this is probably, if I'd planned on making this the first kit, I would have made it a little less detailed in terms of the stitches I used. But if I were to take all the stitches I have here, it would, if I put them in this area, I would have a whole bunch more stitches on the smaller September stitch along than I do here. I've used a ton more thread on the stitch along and spent a lot more time on it than I did on this. This, honestly, I think I had done in probably a weekend. And the nice thing about slow stitching is you can make it as detailed or as basic as you like. A lot of times, if you look, I just will simply lay my stitching out. You know, I'll make my base, and I'll show you that in a second. But then I just draw lines, and I take my quilting ruler, lay it along the fabric. Oh, that's a bigger ruler than I thought I was grabbing. But I will just make lines, typically every, I usually like to put them every 3/8 inch apart as opposed to every 1/2 inch. You can do whatever you prefer. These are probably, nope, those are 3/8 inch for the most part. But I could have stitched this entire thing just with lines without doing any more of the detail work. And I've shared, for me, the stitching is simply about the needle and the thread, and that process relaxes me and reduces my stress level significantly. Now, as I started doing more slow stitching, I kind of do a hybrid of slow stitching and embroidery. So I have certain fabrics that are my favorites. I don't know if I mentioned my unhealthy, it might be healthy, it's fabric, it can't be that bad for you, my obsession with houndstooth. But if you look, I've got 3 houndstooth fabrics on this design. I have Kimberbell. There are several designs from Kimberbell. So the two tone-on-tone houndstooth, and then this one is the swirls that I love to use in my stitching because they're fun to stitch. So this, I stitched the swirls. You would not know that somebody did it differently or took a simpler route if they just stitched lines. Nobody would think a thing of it. So that is definitely something that you can do. I just do plain little straight stitches when I'm tacking down the sayings, and a lot of times I do that along the edge. Mom did quite a bit of the stitching on this, and she does it differently than I would. So she kind of went crazy and did sort of a modified coral knot here, and she's a big blanket stitch fan, so she did blanket stitch here. I will show y'all how to do that in the videos that go with this kit. So in the kit, you're going to get everything you need to make this. You get all the fabrics, the phrases. This, you get a larger piece of fabric, and then I hand cut the roses that I wanted to use. So there's 3 little pieces of flowers that I hand cut to use kind of as embellishments on this kit. You get the crochet flowers, all of those things. But the biggest thing you get is the pattern. And I am pretty proud of what Allie and I came up with for the pattern, because I have tried to figure out, this is my whole year-long process of figuring out how to show people the way to make the slow stitching. And it is basically, we're getting ready to do this right now. I would be gluing as I went, and along with the kit, you will get, like I said, everything you need. So you'll get videos, detailed videos, and the glue that I use. So that's piece 4. I feel like I should. Did I put 5 before 4? I did. That part doesn't even matter. Is anybody gonna know that I put 5 before 4? No. So, okay, 4, 5, then 6. This is one of my favorites. This yarn dyed. 7 is the fun teal. Most of this fabric is Moda, and it's from a collection called Love Lily. And I, of course, loved the collection. 7, okay, now number 8. This, you guys, like, the stuff that was not in the collection. I think there's maybe 4 or 5 fabrics from the collection I used, but like these have been on my shelves for a long time, and I've hoarded them and not used them because I love them. Okay, so that was 8, I'm making sure. 9 is a sweet, sweet Bonnie and Camille print from Moda. They're some of my favorites, and you can always tell how far over your item's supposed to go by the straight line. So I really tried to make this pretty simple so that hopefully you guys could follow along. There's 10 and 11, and you just layer it all. 11, 12, the houndstooth, you have to love the houndstooth. 13, another thing I've hoarded that is Heather Ross fabric. Be Still My Heart. 14, this is Moda. This is another. Mom was like, okay, well, I don't want to cut more kits if we don't have to, because that yellow fabric is one of my favorites. And I was like, I think it's okay, Mom. Then 15, and then I will show you how I did it in the class. I just picked an area and basically made sure that I was covering up all of my edges and hand cut around the flowers. Then say I would cut here, that gives me all of these others to layer, which I did layer them. This is 2 pieces right here, and this is 2 pieces right here, because of course I'm weird and thought the flower clumps needed more color. So that's what you got. So then you've got that. And once you're done, you'll have everything glued down, and that's when you would stitch. Then on the edge of the fabric are the phrases, and you'll get a printout of the pattern and everything. So hopefully this will make my little insane process a little less insane for you guys. And I hope that some of you just do the pattern and use your own fabric, because it can be used for anything. You could use any different fabrics with it that you wanted to. It doesn't have to be bright and rainbowy like mine. So if you have any questions, please ask in the comments, and I so appreciate you hanging out with me for a little while on a Wednesday night, and I will see you tomorrow night. Thanks, everybody.